the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
Alright, so hopefully this will be quick and sweet and to the point. I don't want to elongate. But today we're going to talk about His Holiness Pope Kyrillos VI. So most people know the miracles, and we go up to the icons and kiss it and bosa and take barakah and all the good stuff, as Mark would love to. Mark always takes barakah upstairs, But today I'm kind of going to go in a bit of a different direction, because his miracles and all of that are very easy to talk about, but they're all stories, right? And it's very easy to say, my experience with the story is a little different than your experience, than this experience. But there's one thing that's going to be constant about his patriarchy and who he was as a person that I think, going into Great Lent, I kind of want to emphasize. So, I'm going to kind of start with like a quick biography of the person. Something's happening here. There we go. Of who he was, and then we'll kind of move. So you're going to have to, I'm going to switch the lights just so you guys can see the pictures.
There is one in the middle.
That's okay. You guys can see, right? Okay. A lot of the pictures you're going to have to bear with me are black and white because he's old. So very old. All right. So he's born in 1902, so beginning of last century, as Azir Yusuf Atta. He works as an engineer for a company. At 25 years old, he goes to the monastery of Abanob, which is like the current place where his body is. And he becomes a monk. For 1 year, he becomes like a brother. So if whoever's not aware of how it works, when you enter a monastery, you have to become a brother first. So you serve the monks, the older monks. You kind of see how the monastic life is. And it's a testing period. So they see if you're willing and able to be a monk or not. So he does that, and then a year later, he becomes a monk, and he chooses the name of Mina after his patron saint, Saint Mina. And all the pictures that we see of Pope Kyrillos, you see Saint Mina with, and we'll kind of discuss a little bit of some of the stuff that he did with it. And then once you're a monk, you're not automatically a priest. He gets ordained a priest a couple years later. Okay?
A monk priest.
A monk priest, exactly. Yeah. Still in the monastics, everything is within the monastery. So once you're a monk, does not make you a priest. You have to be ordained a priest to give communion. Otherwise, you're just kind of a monk living in the community as if we're people here. Okay? 1934 comes.
So not every monk is a priest.
True, very true. Actually, a lot of the highest monks, a lot of the people that live in solitude, for example, the sawaq as we say them, and all that, are not priests, because they do not celebrate the liturgy except for once a year. So they live in the mountains, they live wherever they live, and they come down to take communion or whatever it is once a year. So they are not ordained as priests, they're just monks. They live in solitary, or they're ascetics as they would say. Okay? 1934, in the Baramos, they want to make him a bishop, and he refuses, and now he's trying to escape. So 3 years in to become a bishop, to try to get ordained as a bishop, is already a huge thing, right? Because it takes about 25 years regularly, first to become an abbot of a monastery, which is the leader of a monastery, and then to become a bishop, okay? Because a bishop is not just a bishop of like a region, right? We'll keep going. So 1934, he goes to ask the current abbot of his monastery, please let me live as a solitary. Okay, so keep in mind he's 32 years old right now. Okay, at 30 years old, to live as in solitary, right, is kind of what people at that time, okay, in 1930s, it was monks in their 60s and 70s that were doing it, right? They would go and spend their final days, last 10, 15 years, whatever's left of their lives, and they would like to die in solitary. Okay, they want to devote their last years in peace and quiet. Okay, so at 30 years old, he goes. And he's begging to go, and they refuse at first, right? He goes, the abbot actually told him, people do this for people that are 60 and do it for 30, 40 years and fail, don't achieve solitary, and don't achieve that solitude. How can I let someone that's 30 years old that just joined the monastery 4 years ago go into solitary? Okay, so it's drastic changes, right? So finally he convinces them, and he goes and lives as a solitary for 3 years, okay? Then we all know the story of the Tahuna, the windmill, as we say, right? That's like where he lived That's where he lived for a good portion of his life. Now, the story behind why he goes to the windmill is kind of important to who he is as a person. So, in his current monastery of Baramos, right, before he left, he goes, actually, sorry, my apologies. He goes to Abba Samuel after he leaves the solitary and comes back, right? Now, in Abba Samuel's monastery, the Palm Sunday Eve, okay? 6 monks are expelled from the monastery. There was a huge scandal at the time. The monks were accused of doing something, and they don't really release what the accusations were at the time. And the abbot of the monastery, on the eve of Palm Sunday, kicks them out. Kicks them out of the monastery and revokes their monastic garb, okay, which is huge. Because usually you can get expelled from a monastery and you get told go to another monastery, see if they accept you. But if you revoke a monastic garb, you cannot go back, okay? So it's a very heavy change, okay? So Abunamina at the time, Pope Carlos, chooses to leave with them, right? He goes, how can you kick someone out on the eve or during the week of Holy Pascha? So he decides to leave with them, okay? And he tends to the 6 monks during Pascha week. They go to attend in a nearby church. He attends to them, gives them communion, all of that, and stays with them, okay? After a little while with the Pope and all of that stuff, the problem gets solved, the scandal gets resolved, and now they're allowed back in the monastery. So the 6 monks return, but Abunamina refuses to go back. Okay, because at this point there's drama with the abbot, it's awkward. He's like, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to go back, let me go somewhere else. So that's when he goes to live in the windmill, okay? So that's like the famous windmill, if you've ever visited Egypt, like it's in like the middle of nowhere, okay? Then finally...
It used to be in the middle.
It used to be, yeah, okay. Now they put like monuments everywhere there, yeah. Then he became the abbot of the monastery. And then the big changes, again, within 3 years, okay, now he lives as something called an urban monastic, okay? If any of you know, like Abuna Anastasi, he's what we would call modern day urban monastic. He lives with people, he doesn't live in a monastery, but he serves as a monk, okay? That is an urban monastic. So Abunamina at the time left the abbotry, he was the head of a monastery, and resigned from it, right? And they promoted a new monk to be the abbot, and then he left to be an urban monastic, okay? Keep in mind, this is the most important, I would say, this is where the transformation begins. 1947 to 1959, okay? I wrote here, family, students flock to him and he becomes their spiritual father. Now, I'll show you why that's important, okay? And we'll come back to it. And so the last one is he becomes patriarch at age 57, right? And his tenure as a patriarch was 12 years. Pretty short, but before that it was 2 years for a patriarch. Other patriarchs were like 4 years, 5 years, because back then people would die very early. We got blessed with Pope Shenouda, who served 40 years, right? So people died and lived throughout Spain, you know? So, like I said, keep this in mind. Keep in mind 1947, 1959, where I said family, students, and other people come and flock to him and he becomes a spiritual father, right? So we reach this point of mid-1900s. The Coptic Church is on the verge of being no more, okay? The Pope that was currently on the seat, which is kind of funny, his name was Pope Youssef, right? He was the Pope that preceded Pope Carlos, okay? He was kidnapped off the See of St. Mark, and yes, kidnapped, okay? He wasn't exiled. So a lot of places say he was exiled. He was kidnapped off the See of St. Mark by the Beshas, because at the time Egypt was run by Beshas and I don't know, like the King Farouk and like that group. So it was a very dictatorship. It was like a monarchy, okay? They kidnap him. He hires people and they kidnap him. Right? They still don't admit it to this day, but that's what's believed by the church. Okay? Regardless, people think he was a failed pope because he didn't do much, but they kidnapped him, and when he finally gets back, when they return him back to the See of St. Mark, okay, the Holy Synod chooses to remove him. Right? So once again, keep this in mind. It is, when I say a circus, it was a circus. Like, with all respect to the church, the Coptic Church at the point was a circus. Imagine getting kidnapped. Your Pope gets kidnapped. Crazy, right? Your Pope gets kidnapped.
And no patriarch for 3 years.
Yeah, your Pope comes back now, and then he gets kicked out. They're like, never mind, we don't want you in there. Yeah.
Why was he kidnapped?
There was political. So a lot of the heavy. If you guys remember, where the start of the cross is, I did some research, but there's no clear evidence of anything. A lot of the start of the blue crosses, right, started around that era. That's what they say. Where the Ottomans and the Muslims or whatever would start putting the lead crosses to tell the difference between the Muslims and the Christians and who's what. And that's how it started. So there was already drama between the Muslims and the Christians. So the persecution was then. So that's what's believed. But once again, I don't have hard evidence. It's kind of like hearsay at this point. Okay? So let's keep going. Lay people. Oh, the most important part, like Samir said, there's no patriarch for 3 years. Okay, so the Holy Synod is now running. You guys know what the Holy Synod is? The Holy Synod is 150 bishops and metropolitans that run the church. They lay down the foundation, what we believe. They, like the ecumenical councils and stuff like that, the people from there that go, that lay down the dogma, that trust, all that stuff. Understood? Okay? So he leaves, there's no patriarch for 3 years, right? Lay people like us, are fighting the priests. There's corruption in the church. There's conflicts in money, land, and power. Once again, this is a changing dynamic in the politics of Egypt. And it's kind of like keeping up with the Kardashians at this point. I'm telling you, it's a complete circus. Okay? So, the most important part I want you to pay attention to is the last sentence where it says there's an extreme lack of education among priests and lay people. And I'll tell you a short story I heard while I was like podcasting and reading about the book. So there's a priest who became monumental in the transformation of the church, and he had his fiancée at the time. So he goes to their fiancée and he tells her, "I'm going to become a priest when we get married." Okay? So he goes, "If you would like to stay with me, fantastic. If you'd like to leave, I won't be offended, I understand." Okay? So she says, "No, of course I'll stay with you," whatever, great Valentine's Day story, you know. And then they go to the parents to finalize, like have to go to the family, talk about what the dowry is going to be, all that stuff, right? So he goes to the family, and the family sits down, all the uncles, the aunts, whatever, and they listen to him, and he tells them, "I'm going to become a priest once we get married." Okay? And then it was like, you guys know like the old images of like people with Soweto, like the Saida and like all of that. He explains that this is the image that he got in the house. He's telling the story, okay? People were like, they like spat at him. He said he heard the worst curses he's ever heard in his life, right? Just because he wanted to be a priest. Once again, keep in mind I said this is the period of darkness where the church was a circus, okay? So they are the least respected people. If you were a garbage man in Zerbalin, you had more respect than a priest. Okay, word for word, I took that sentence out of the podcast I took. Okay, it's hard to kind of wrap our minds around now, but you get my point. Okay, so we keep going. The priesthood is a disgrace. They're the lowest class in society, and we're reaching this point in the late 1940s where everything's a mess. Okay, the politics of Egypt is already a mess because it's going from a monarchy, which is a King Farouk and all of the kings and beshas and all that, to now Gamal Abdel Nasser, as you guys know, is starting to take over as president later on, but the government is starting to change, right?
Salah,
the Salah, as they say, the revolution. So Egypt itself is in huge disarray. Everyone's going crazy, and the church was already doing that on its own. So together, it was an explosion. Okay, this time was a mess. All right. So then, what changes? Right, like I already told you, the Coptic church was all over the place. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to show you guys a picture, and I'm going to speak a little bit about this picture. Okay. This is a picture of the Pope on, I believe, the day of his ordination when he became, the day of his ordination when he praised the Holy Liturgy. Okay? And we're going to speak
as a Pope.
Yes, ordination as a Pope. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about like prayer in a way that I haven't heard before, and the podcast and the book that I read it was good timing because I needed a slap in the face before the Great Lent. A little bit about his routine, okay? This man used to wake up at 2 in the morning, so his day would go from 2 in the morning to 9 p.m. at night. That's his usual day, okay? So, wake up at 2 in the morning, prepare the Urban. When he was living in the Tahuna, he would do the same thing. He would walk 5 miles to the nearest church, prepare the Urban, 2 in the morning, pray Tasbihah, Matins, pray the liturgy until 6 a.m., okay? 6 a.m., the students, remember I said keep in mind about the students, they're the most important part of this, right? The students would come, the families would come, he would tend to them, it was like kind of like he was teaching them about the church, all of that, leading them, he was their spiritual father, right? Till 2:30 p.m. he was with them, he would have something to eat, he would break his fast at 2:30, okay? So keep in mind now it's been 12 hours he's been fasting. And then he would go and do work and pray Vespers, okay? I put work in quotes because his work, and he's known for this in the monastic life, because he used to say, I gotta go, I have work to do, okay? And they only knew what that meant when he became a pope later on, because he had secretaries and stuff that would interrupt him. And when he would say, I have work, he would go and pray, okay? His work was prayer, so let's keep that in mind. He wasn't going to the farms, he wasn't going to make food, anything, okay? When he say, I gotta go, I have work, straight to prayer. People would lose sight of him, okay? To the point, one point, they said the story is, he pushed himself so hard in prayer that one night, one of the younger monks decided to pray Tasbihah with him, so he came early. He came at like 4 a.m. And he went to him and he's praying Tasbihah, and he doesn't hear Abuna Mina's, or at this point he's a patriarch, he doesn't hear his voice anymore, okay? He doesn't hear Pope Carlos's voice anymore. So he goes in to check on him, okay? And he finds him balled over on the floor holding his stomach, okay, passed out. So he's like, what in the world is happening? Takes him to a hospital immediately, okay, like from the monastery nearby, takes the car, takes him to the hospital. Turns out he ruptured his appendix, right? And it was ruptured for a week. He had like a severe infection or whatever. But honestly, like thinking now, obviously as a modern world, we're thinking, okay, that's a little crazy, bro. Like if you're sick, go to the doctor. You know, like don't be a hero. But the first thing that came to my mind is like, imagine like, they say like when you get injure yourself during a sport game or whatever, you have such adrenaline running through your body that you don't notice the injury until after. Your leg swells and all that, if I turn my ankle, and then till after, and then the next day you're like, how did I move on this, right? And in my mind I was like, this has to be to such an insane level for him to have, he passed out with a ruptured appendix before he was dragged to a hospital in prayer, right? It's kind of cliche, you're like, okay, he's going to talk about prayer, great, okay, cool, you know? Just keep that in mind. Imagine, like, I stubbed my toe the other day and I actually felt like I was going to throw up everywhere. I was in serious pain. I literally can't imagine rupturing an appendix, and we have doctors here that will tell you the pain is, I think, Mike, you've ruptured an appendix before, right? Like,
I didn't pray.
You didn't pray. I know you weren't praying, but I'm just saying, like, pain-wise, okay, it's not tolerable, right? The most important part I want to talk about here is, and this is when we're going to transition kind of out of the history, and we'll talk a bit more about the important part, all right? So, these are his disciples. This is why I kept saying, keep an eye on the disciples. Does anyone know who the first picture is? The old man and the old monk on the side. Abuna al-Miskin, right? Nice, I heard you too. Abuna al-Miskin is considered one of the most popular theologians of our era, right? He's like one of the most popular. He has books. He's very educated. The Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, everyone recognizes his writings and stuff. He was a huge part of and everyone knows a bit of the drama that happened with Pope Shenouda, I'm sure. But regardless, we can speak about that later. It's not.
Abuna al-Miskin was one of his disciples.
Yep.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So this man right here was one of his disciples. He brought him in. He was a little older, right? But this was one of his number one disciples. Someone tell me who the second picture is. Yeah, it's like green. Right? This is Pope Shenouda, Nazir Gayyid. Okay? Nazir Gayyid was pretty much his younger brother. Right? So Pope Shenouda was one of his youngest disciples at the time. Okay? And this is just a picture over here with Pope Shenouda. I know it's a bit cut off with Pope Carlos when he was the Bishop of Education. Okay? And then who's the last person I think is the easiest one? Archdeacon Habib Gerges. Now everyone here is looking at me like, dude, how is Archdeacon Habib Gerges part of the movement? Okay? The two factors that made Pope Kyrillos like the same that we say he is today is the whole point were these two things. One was the Sunday school movement, which we all attribute to Archdeacon Habib Gerges, like he was the initiator of it, right? But the movement itself was held by Pope Kyrillos, okay? But I just want to show you some of and there's others. There's Abba Athanasius of Beni Suef. If you guys are from Egypt, you guys know like this guy's a godly man, all of that stuff, you know? And there's many more names, but I kind of just got the most popular ones, okay? So, now we're going to transition. I only have 4 slides left. These are kind of, it's short, but this is kind of the bulk of the talk. The craziest part now is coming into the patriarchy. So 1959, he gets ordained as patriarch, and now he's starting to take the reform, okay? There was no pope, like I said, for the past 3 years. So the church right now is kind of devoid of any structure. It's kind of everywhere, okay? So they interview him when he gets ordained as a pope, and they ask him the first thing, what do you see for the church and what agenda, like what's your reform, how are you going to save the church, it's falling apart, blah, 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 right? They're like, the patriarch even before he was thrown off the throne, was kidnapped off the throne. Like, you think people are going to take you seriously? These are the questions he's getting, okay? His response was, I want to see people pray. Tell you, no problem. Like, you laugh in his face. Next question, what's your strategy for reform? Okay? It is better not to speak, his response, it is better not to speak, but to pray. It's like, okay, bro. Next, like, give us something. Okay? The beginning of his patriarchy, everyone was like, oh my God, this guy is going to save the church. This guy he was very well known, very popular with the deacons, the Sunday school movement, so his name was thrown out there very often. Okay? To the point that while he was still a priest, people were envious of him because people would leave their church to go pray wherever he's praying. It's kind of like when who are like the famous priests that travel, like when Abuna Tadros Malati prays in a church, people will come from all across, right? Also, side note, Abuna Tadros Malati, also a disciple of Pope Kyrillos. Side note. One of the younger ones with Ambashiri. So, at this point, people are kind of excited. They're like, okay, great. He's going to save the church. We're going to do great. Okay? But then it became a problem, and people we only see Pope Kyrillos right now as like the saint. He's like, oh, this guy was so holy. He had miracles. He did all these cool stuff, right? People don't know that from the day he was a monk to the day he passed away, this man was the most persecuted man in Egypt, right? Once again, the period that he was living in was not easy, right? So the synod, and I'm going to read one of these things. It says the thing that troubled people the most, like the metropolitans, the bishops, the people that are supposed to be backing up this man, is like, we wanted a patriarch, not a ma'alim. Their question is, what is all this prayer? Imagine you're metropolitan. Imagine Abba David going to Pope Kyrillos and he's like, bro, stop praying. Like, tell me to do something. Imagine the craziness of that, right? Just imagine the state of the church. What about reform? Who's going to talk to the government? Okay? These are important, right? Talking to the government, reform, I'm not saying those are unimportant, right? But imagine your metropolitans and your bishops and the team that's supposed to be backing up is telling you, why are you praying, right? The one point, the Holy Synod got so fed up with his prayer, okay, with who he was and how he dealt with things, that they wanted to stand him down and ask him to leave. So they wanted to do what they did to the first pope and like, bro, yalla, in the Bible. Like as if it was like a student government. It's like, okay, we're sick of you, get us another person. That's how pathetic it was at the time, okay? Priests, I want you guys to hear this part. Priests were writing editorials against the pope, okay? I'm going to read you guys one editorial. One of the Coptic newspapers at the time says, he prays Vespers, he prays the liturgy, he just wants to fill the churches and get the priests to pray at 4 a.m., okay? He wants them to fill the churches with incense and then get high off the smoke. Word for word, this editorial, how do I translate it?
Get high on drugs.
Essentially, we will that he's behind.
Nice, right? He was right.
Yeah, hi.
He gets high.
Okay? Imagine the Coptic newspapers are saying that the Pope, if we said that about our uncle here, we'd get slaughtered. Okay? They're writing it about the Pope of the Coptic Church, saying he's trying to fill the churches so he could get high off the smoke. Okay? Another editorial would write something along the lines of, prayer is not enough, we need more. Okay? And then there's a story about a printer that broke, and it's like one of these side stories, but I'm going to choose to move past it for now. We'll come back to the stories of that. Okay? This is his response, or this is one of his responses. It was written in 1928 when he was still a monk. This is one of his responses when he was faced with that, right? It's called the Harbor of Salvation. So people thought he was very uneducated, and it was the biggest misconception, right? Because once again, monks and priests were uneducated at the time, so they thought he was. He spoke English, okay? He actually spoke 2 other languages. I don't know which two, to be entirely honest, but in the book it says he spoke 4 languages, but English was his primary one, right? Other than Arabic, okay? He's a very well written. He quotes the fathers, the early church fathers. Like, he's a very well educated person. This is what he writes. Prayer is the mother of virtues and every religious instinct, the header of every virtue and its protector. It's the store of graces, the medal of blessings, the guard of satisfaction, the controller of anger, the calming of the Holy Spirit, or the calming Holy Spirit. It is the victory of the warrior. Okay, this is the part that I kind of like got me ready to run through a wall, right? It is the victory of the warrior, the banner of the fighter, the seal of the chastity, the reign of virginity, the sentry of the travelers, and the guard of the sleepers. It is power for the weak, wealth for the poor, a resort to the afflicted, and a comfort to the grieving. And most importantly, an intercessor for the sinners. Okay? This is not someone saying like Salul Akbar in the morning and at night and say your prayers and you're going to be okay. And thank God for Mama Baba and for the food. And this is literally from beginning to end. He covers every single thing that any of us have in our lives. You travel, there. Your virginity, your purity, there. Right? You're a soldier or you're whatever it is, there. Right? It says it's the store of graces, the medal of blessings. The medal means you've reached the top. Right? You have all your other blessings. Right? A medal means you've completed it. Prayer, he's saying, is the medal of those blessings. Joy, peace, long-suffering, all the fruits of the Spirit we speak about, prayer, in his mind, okay, how he lived his life, is the medal of those blessings. Okay? Keep that in mind. I understand his view on the prayer, right? At least I try, I'm going to speak for myself. I try to define prayer, right? Like Abuna tells me to pray when I go to confess. He's like, maybe try this prayer, right? I'm like, Abuna, I get lazy. Okay, try this prayer. Try reading only one psalm in the morning, and at night, try to read like an absolution so you don't get lazy, okay? I'm trying to figure out one way to pray for 10 minutes of my day, but to him, prayer was, you say Pope Carolus, it says hey, prayer, absolutely, it was his life, right? And then, if I say this to you, to me, it's like, if someone else said this to me, it's like, oh, he's trying to be cliche, he's trying to be poetic and clever and cute, right? Like, it's very easy once again to think of it, right? But how can someone, like if I say this to you, fine. But when this man says it, okay, the man that made the church, fallen from utter despair, right? There was no church, to where we were when Pope Shenouda gathered the church and started carrying us forward, okay? When he says it, then I think it's a little different, right? Does that make sense? I know it's very easy to overlook, but keep that in mind. And the only reason I'm focusing on the prayer part, one, because it's the most important aspect of his life, but two, because we're going into the Holy Land, right? And for me, it's the hardest time of year because I struggle. I struggle with the food part. If you guys know me, food is my life. Prayer was his, food is mine. This is the hardest time of year, and it's the time of year that I tend to lose most of my, like the virtues that I gain, okay? Let me tell you We have 2 slides left, sorry. Requirements for prayer. This is the bulk of it. If you take anything out of today, this is it. Okay? The first one. These are his 5 rules. Does anyone know who this is very similar to? Gunahana, okay? And I'll share a story about Gunahana that relates kind of a little similar to this. The first rule, okay? When you're standing before your Lord, the attire of your soul should be woven with threads of non-hatred, envy, or grudge. Okay? He's pretty much saying, if you have non-hatred, envy, grudge towards anyone, brother, friend, sister, whatever it is, okay? You're not praying. Okay? Hatred in his mind between God, between you and another person is what hurt God the most. And in the podcast it says he speaks about Cain killing Abel, right? And Cain asked God asked God, okay, where is Abel your brother? Okay, that's like kind of part of the question. And he goes, and Cain doesn't really respond. He goes, the blood of your brother cries out from the ground. Okay, meaning it's not saying that like, oh, you killed him in cold blood and you're guilty. Like I'm gonna kill you now, right? It is. He's not worried about the sin itself in this point. It is what the sin entailed, right? It's killing his brother, the hatred, the envy, the grudge, which all 3 had by Cain, right? And Cain and Abel. Essentially, and then he kind of makes a statement. He goes, you have any of these 3, okay? Your prayer, you might as well not pray. It's a crazy statement to say, like, tell someone don't pray, right? But like we think about it, don't pray. If you hate someone, if you have a grudge, or if you have envy in your heart, just save yourself your time and God's time and just don't pray. Okay? And this is going to be kind of where we have the discussion, so keep this in mind. Okay? If you have to go, rule number 2, if you have to go out of your soul, protect what you have gathered. Okay? This is like kind of saying, essentially, you're disconnected from your prayer life. So I wake up in the morning, I say my whatever prayer that I do in the morning. Then I go into the shower, play my music, make my coffee, kind of watch TV as I'm having my coffee in the morning and go to work or school or whatever you do, right? As if you didn't pray, as if you didn't do anything, okay? And he says, spend the day in preparation for your prayer at night. Spend the day in preparation for your prayer at night. It's not saying start your day by praying and then live your life and then come back at night and do your thing again, right? Spend the day in preparation. We spend our days in preparation thinking about work. Like I know I have for example, a specific patient tomorrow. I go home the night before and I prepare. I'm like, okay, I have to get this ready. I have to know what I'm going to do. What's the procedure, blah, 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 right? I'm doing that for work. He's spending the day in preparation for the prayer he's going to say tomorrow. Okay? Not sitting there writing down like what he's going to pray, but understand he's preparing his heart, right? And I know we're not at this level. I hope some of you are. I'm definitely not, right? And I pray in the morning, and if I do pray, and the next thing I'm doing is on my phone playing Candy Crush or having my coffee or whatever it is. I know Candy Crush is old, I get it. But that's how I live my life, right? I don't take in what I learned or what I prayed or what I gathered, as he says. Right? If you have to go out of your soul, that means our everyday lives, we go out of our soul. We talk to people that aren't Christians. We don't deal with people that are in our church all the time, right? If you have to go out of your soul, protect what you have gathered, right? Don't lose the sanctity of the 10 minutes you've had, for example. Okay? This reminds me of Gunahana very much. It goes, among all other virtues undertaken by man, there is none better than prostrations. Okay? I can't speak much about this, and once again, like I said, coming from the person that, sure, you don't have to believe all the stories. There's actually, this is a hard number given by the book, there's over 100,000 miracles that were written down about Pope Kyrillos during his life. 100,000. Okay? Say, for example, 90,000 of those are tons hallucinating. Right? That's okay. 90%. I'm saying the over 95,000% are tons hallucinating and going crazy. People that just want to believe things. Say, let's say. I don't agree with that, but let's say we do that, right? There's still 5,000 miracles, okay, that have happened. Okay? I'm going to bet on the guy that has probably fought with demons in his spiritual life, that has overcome them with his miracles, right? Because God doesn't give power to a man to do miracles unless he's done these things, right? I'm going to bet on this guy. If he's telling me prostrations are the way to go, I'm going to do prostrations. If my doctor says you got to take this medicine, I'm going to take the medicine because I don't know better than the doctor. Okay? We're understanding each other? Yeah.
What's up, prostration?
Hamatanya. Bowing yeah. Okay? Next one. And this is kind of similar to the other one. Spend the most of your day in prayers and praise, preparing for the war at night. Okay? In the monastic life, the nighttime obviously is the most scary time. They're in a desert, most of them. Okay? My sister, for example, who is not here, bless her soul, runs from the car to the door of our house, afraid of a cat or something or of a noise. Okay, we live in a neighborhood with houses within 5 minutes of each other. Okay, God bless her soul too. Okay, I'm just saying, these guys lived with wolves. These guys lived, and if you've climbed up the place of the mountain of St. Anthony, okay, you saw what that was like. Okay, there is nothing there. We've made stairs for that area now. There was none of that there. Okay? Prepare for the war at night. That's similar to protect your soul. Okay? The last one is persisting and honoring reading more than prayer, allowing it to become the springs of your prayer. Okay? Contradictory, right? How does that make sense? If you just told me prayer is the number one rule in my life, how is reading more important? Common sense, right? It doesn't make sense. He says here, let reading become the spring of your knowledgeable prayer. Because that is where you inherit the roots of your prayer. Okay? The roots of your prayer. Meaning, at the end of the day, how are you going to learn to pray if I don't know how? If my dad didn't teach me how to raise my hands when I say our Father, right? We teach our kids to do the cross when we say adios, right? If I don't show it to them, how are they going to do it? Right? And if my parents didn't show it to me, and if their parents didn't show it to them, whatever, how are we going to do these traditions? Right? He's saying, in order for you to know how to pray, okay, you must read. You must read the church fathers, you must read the Bible, you must read all these things, right? He says you learn how to pray from the saints and from the honorable people in the Bible. We think that prayer, and this is the part once again is my life. I think prayer is like a vending machine, right? Like you pray, you give it's like, okay, I put 4 quarters and come on, like where's my snack, right? It's like, okay, I prayed last week like a couple times, okay, 3-4 times. I prayed about the exam, I prayed about the work, I prayed about whatever, so like where's it at, right? It's like as if it's a vending machine, right? And we've heard that before, right? He says the correct prayer is when you're immersed in the church and in the fathers of the church that taught us how to pray. Okay? So 5 rules again, right? Standing before your Lord, the attire of your soul should be woven with threads of non-hatred, envy, or grudge, right? And once again, we're going into the Holy Lent. If there are 5 things that I believe I've earned out of kind of having to read and listen about this holy man, it's these, right? Envy, non-hatred, and grudge. Okay? 2, go out of if you have to go out of your soul, protect everything you've gathered. There's nothing better than prostrations, and during the Holy Lent, and especially during Pascha week, we do a lot of prostrations. We do a lot of matanyas, right? Spend most of your day in prayers and praise, preparing for the war at night, and persisting in honor and reading more than prayer, allowing it to become the springs of your prayer. Okay? And this is kind of like, I'm going to kind of go more into the stories, and then there's just one discussion I want to have in the end, only because Uncle Samir's here. So, Abuna Raphael is His Holiness's secretary, okay? Because I often heard the Pope abasing himself. Abasing means like making fun of himself or bringing himself down, okay? Says, the boy became a patriarch, okay? Look at how he looks at himself. The boy became a patriarch. Like one of us does something in church and we're walking around with our chests out ready to go. It's like, yeah, I did that. Like, what's up? Right?
Yes.
And it's normal, right? It's our pride. But someone that has someone that has lived this life of prayer where he is always on the bottom looking up, right? Instead of on the top looking down. He goes, the boy became a patriarch. And he says, if he asked someone for something and found too many people responding to his request, he goes, his shirt is at his knees and 10 are at his service. These are his famous sayings. I'm not like pulling out like a quote. His shirt is at his knees. When I think of a shirt is at his knees, it's like a little child. A shirt is too big for a little child walking around. And 10 are at his service. Imagine the humility of someone at this level thinking, and he says these things out loud, right? Another one, this one's my favorite. Because we kind of experience this very often. One day His Holiness heard that one of the deacons criticized the way a priest chanted a mass. Okay? He said the priest's hymns barely had a tune. Okay? He goes, what is this? So the Pope wanted to gently teach the deacon a new behavior. Okay? So what does he do? He did so at the Divine Liturgy attended by the priest and that deacon. So he said to the deacon, do you hear how Abuna is praying? The prayers are coming from his heart. If 2 or 3 people like him existed in this world, God would have turned away his wrath. Now, once again, very dramatic, but all the deacons, if you're not a deacon, have experienced this to the max, whether with any priest. I hear a priest that doesn't know how to pray, and man, it is a rough liturgy. I'm sitting there like, please, Lord, have mercy. Like, seriously, right? This deacon literally was us, right? And the Pope very simply told him, look at how this guy prays, right? He's not sitting here singing for the choirs and for the showboaters of the church and to make sure everyone here is having a great time, right? He said if 2 or 3 people like him existed, it is the same thing that Jonah, we just had Jonah's fast, he goes, or Abraham, he's like, if 1, if 10, if 100, okay, fasted, I'll save the land. He says if 2 or 3 were to be like this priest, I would turn away my wrath. 2 or 3. Okay? These are just kind of like ideas of understanding. Now, I'm going to open a quick question for discussion and we're pretty much done. Okay? And that's the discussion we always have, does prayer,
Before we go into discussion, is himself referring to himself as a child something like he's putting himself down? Or, I mean, doesn't Jesus talk about children and how we should kind of be similar to them?
In this, I see what you're saying. In this one, he's pretty much saying his shirt is at his knees. Okay, like a child is like when they have a too large of a shirt, and 10 are at his service, meaning like. And before I told you, look, the boy became a patriarch. He saw himself as under everyone. That is what it was. There's a story that they mention it saying, if his shoe was ever untied, okay, and someone would run to tie his shoe for him when he was an older man, he would look at the deacon or whatever it was, and he goes, let this day pass in peace. As if you would ruin his peace if you tied his shoes for him. Right? But the idea was, it wasn't that like, oh yeah, like, bro, I'm going to tie my own shoes. It's like, this is the extreme humility. He lived what I'm saying, prayer, right? And he's on his knees praying upwards all the time, right? So he sees himself at the bottom. He's not looking for someone to do his dirty work, go grab me a coffee, go grab me a tea. He's telling him, let this day pass in peace, okay? It's crazy. Some of the things are so dramatic and extreme, but it's crazy to just understand a little bit of them.
Sorry, he didn't accept help.
No, it's not that he didn't accept help. Obviously he accepted it, but it's the idea that these are certain stories just to prove who he was as a person. Like, meaning he's not sitting here like commanding, go get me this, go get me this. Someone in his, someone in this power.
Others, not others to serve.
Exactly. He always wanted to serve, exactly. Okay? And it's the discussion is, what do we do? So, does prayer change things, right? So we see a man of prayer. Does prayer change the outcome of something? And this is something, I know Samir has these answers. I fight with Samir on some of his answers on these. And obviously Samir is giving us what the church believes. Does prayer change, first question, does prayer change an outcome of a situation? We're done. This is, the last slide is just pictures. Does prayer change the outcome of a situation?
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it does.
Give me like, what's your evidence, or like what's your thought process.
Like for example, if two people like really, angry with each other, or one person's angry at the other, and one of them prays for the other, like for God, for example, to soften his heart, to give him grace in his eyes, stuff like that, or to open his mind like to why he's angry, what he should think about, or how he should like overcome this. I've seen it. It does work, and you realize that when you meet with the person and you talk to them, and then the response is completely different from what you thought it would be.
Okay, so that's a more personal, like something you've experienced.
Yeah.
Okay. Does prayer change the outcome of a situation? No.
God has a plan, and whatever. I mean, like it's corny to say, but prayer is for you. God isn't waiting to be like looked up to or to be praised. Not waiting for you to do a matanya for Him, just because like He's this supreme ruler, He's this tyrant that we have to like obey Him.
So end result is the same?
End result is the same because end result is God's result.
Cool. So end result is the same. So now we have someone that says prayer does change something. Another person that's essentially saying the end result is already there.
But I have a point.
One second. Go ahead and then you can go ahead.
He was talking about the personal one, which I agree with, but like we use this example all the time. Like you can't, like I don't think it changes the outcome, because if you have an exam coming up and you're gonna pray, and like you're expecting not to study, you can't come and be like, oh, like where's the 100? Because the outcome is not gonna be you're like.
So we're not talking about the obvious like.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna run into a machine gun fire and be like, I pray Lord this time. Like I'm speaking about stuff like that we actually put in the word. Yeah.
Well, from my eyes, prayer is not meant to change outcome, but to change your mind and your heart. So God, you're not telling God, do something for me, but you're asking God, or at least from the way I pray that I've learned from Guna Anthony actually, and something he taught me is, you're asking God to be there with you and to guide your heart and your mind, because you can't change nature, you can't change other people's actions, and you can't change God's plan. So the only thing you can kind of work on is your mind and your heart. There's nothing else.
So we have two that doesn't change. Samir is ready to go. He has two that doesn't change. Yeah. Christine, sorry.
I think prayers doesn't work without faith.
Okay. What do you mean?
So if you pray but you don't have faith in God that He will do that for you, so I don't say.
So does it change the outcome though? Like that.
Prayers will change, but you have to have a trust God that He will do
you have to have
that. Faith.
Okay. So prayer does change.
And sometimes
Yeah. What's your point?
I think sometimes we pray but we don't believe what God say. Like for example, بالعربي يقولوا اطلبوا تجدوا. So نطلب بس we do not make sure that He will give.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
If the ultimate goal is for you to like personally develop, the ultimate goal of God is to develop you, it might be like the plan might be conditional. Let's say like God wants you to pray, and if you pray, something is going to happen. If you don't pray, He still wants you to pray. He wants you to care about the faith, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So the story of St. Mary, at the wedding,
Mm-hmm.
when she interceded for for Jesus to change the wine, He said, "My time has not come." So does that mean if she hadn't interceded, He wouldn't have turned into wine? But when she did, although He said, "My time hasn't come," she had faith that He will change it. So can you call that change of intercession? I mean, situation because of intercession, or you can't? Because if not, then God doesn't change. He's not really an actual person. If He does what He does, if you can't reason with Him, then it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
That's what I think.
That's good.
That's sort of a human quality. So
He's saying
reason-
God isn't like that.
Yeah.
Like you can't.
You
Yeah.
can reason God.
Sam, what are your thoughts? Which way are you? Left or right? Prayer does change.
I think God gives
There's
people
only
the
two
right
options here.
things for their life.
Sam, go ahead.
The way I see it is that my prayer makes God accomplish His will through me.
So
So prayer doesn't change the outcome.
ها؟
That makes no sense.
لا ما هو اصل it all depends on why you're praying. If you're praying to change the outcome while you're praying for God to accomplish His will.
Let's say
انتوا يعني what is better for
God's
you؟
will is the outcome.
نعم؟
God's will is the outcome.
But it
You're
might not be
praying
your
for-
will.
It's not your
It's
will.
His
You're
will.
praying for
So
the-
prayer is important to have God accomplish His will,
Yes.
not to change the outcome. To accomplish His will. The big question is, what if you don't pray? That's the question.
Yeah. We're getting away
That's
from
the big question.
It's if I don't pray, right? If I don't pray for the person that is lost from the church, right? The one lost sheep that is lost from the church. Is God's will gonna also be to still save him? It is, right? God's will isn't gonna change for that. He wants everyone to be saved. But now, what is the outcome for that person? It's not as black and white anymore, is it?
some people are.
What I heard prayer is like, it's the best way for us to find out what God's will is, because through prayer we learn what His will is, and then His will is always good for us. So oftentimes we'll pray for stuff we feel like we need or we want, but you know, it's cliche. It sounds these aren't always things for us or things that are good for us. So through prayer we find out what God's will is for us. And God's will is the best for us. So if we pray for someone like, oh, this person's in the hospital and he's sick or whatever, and we're praying for him, like I know we've all heard this before, but not praying for him to be healed or whoever's in the hospital to be healed. We're praying for God's will to be done, which is the best will.
Are you though? Because I've never prayed for God's will to be done when someone close to me was sick. I'll tell you that.
No, I'm saying
I don't care, to be entirely honest, I didn't care what God's will was. With all due respect, I'm not saying that as like I'm a tough guy, right?
There's a reason it's an inaudible prayer. It is called an inaudible prayer. When Abuna visits someone in the hospital, and he's kneeling there and praying, one of the prayers he's saying is, and if it is your will to take this person,
Yeah.
let your will be done. That part is not being said out loud. That is an inaudible prayer. But it is absolutely being said.
Yeah, but that's Abuna. We're talking about
what I'm
me.
saying
Hold
is-
on, wait.
I'm not saying that's what we do. I'm saying.
I know, that's a good point. That doesn't
Keep
mean
it yourself.
anything.
I hope we pray the same prayer as Abuna's prayer.
I'm saying.
But when we pray, I want this and I want this to happen, and that's the only way I see it as his way to say yes and no, yes to what I want. فاهم قصدي؟ يعني the way I see God answering my prayer is to do what I want, and if He doesn't do what I want, He's not answering my prayer. And that's why I say it should be this way. Whether it's gonna be healed or he's gonna go home or go to heaven or whatever, let it be according to your will.
Yeah, I really like the example that Armani was talking about. When at the wedding of Cana, when the wine ran out and St. Mary was Jesus, if you consider that a prayer, she didn't pray. I mean, I don't know what was in her mind, but I highly doubt in her mind was, oh, he's going to change the water into wine. That's such a far-fetched thing to think, right? And so she never prayed for that. She just said they have no wine. So you solve it.
It's solved.
Figure something out. Because like, who in their right mind would be like, oh, I know he's going to change water into wine. No, maybe like merchants will come, right? And the wine will be wine. But like, she didn't ask her any of that. She just said she presented the problem to him, right? And so if we want to carry that example to our lives, if we're faced with something, we can present him with the problem and then say, like, reveal your will to me so I can follow that.
Back to the question, though,
Yeah,
does it change?
That's what I wanted to say.
If I don't pray, does it change? That was the question. You had something to say.
I just want to know the answer to my question.
I want to know the answer to say that.
Wait, we know what's done. We know what's done.
Oh, sorry.
No, so if we just extend that, if St. Mary hadn't said nothing, would anything have changed?
That's the question. What do you think?
So maybe not.
No, I mean, yeah.
And I was going to tell you, when I was reading this recently, and I was like this exact story, right? And I was struggling with it. I went to a spiritual father, and he said to me, it's never black and white, and he kind of like chastised me for it. He was like, don't think black and white. It's like 99% of the time it's a gray area, unless what you're doing in your life is directly against God's will, you know. In that case, like it's black and white, like don't do the bad thing, right? Or do the good thing. But he said to me, it's almost always a gray area. So the best way to do is present the issue to God and he will take care of it.
So we don't pray, does it change? Is the person that we didn't pray for, the person that I know in my heart, for example, one of my friends, if I have a friend that doesn't come to church anymore, right? He stopped coming to church, he got caught up in the wrong crowd or whatever, right? I stopped praying for him. Not only did I stop praying, I'm not speaking only prayer as in like, oh please God, and I don't do action. I'm saying prayer with action, right? I don't do my prayer. Is his heart going to change? Because it's God's will on its own? Yeah.
But technically, isn't there always someone praying for someone else, like what we do in liturgy? The orphan, the strangers, the not. So everyone's being prayed for in one way or another.
Sure, but that's kind of giving up that's like an escape of saying like, I pray for the orphan, so every orphan in the world is okay.
No, not that, but
You know?
it's like the world is not going to stop just on one
It's not.
prayer.
See, he disagrees with that. This is where I want it to come at, right? That's my point here, is like, he doesn't agree with you there. He doesn't agree with me, I agree with you.
I
He
mean,
doesn't agree with any of us.
No, I get it. Like when we all pray together, of course, it's stronger and everything. But what I'm trying to say is, everyone gets prayed for.
Yeah.
So,
Come on.
so to prove that it happens or does not happen is impossible. The only way to do so would be I'd have to randomize two groups. I'd have to blind both groups. One group is hoping for something, the other group is hoping for it as well. One of them prays, the other one does not. You see either way.
Sure.
That doesn't work.
We're not giving the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I say verse?
Hold on. But then you also have the way, the quick out, which is very frustrating for people, which is pray about it. So if you pray about it and it ends up happening, like in a cheap description, like a horoscope, you start believing the horoscope. If I pray about something and it happens the first time, thank God it worked. Confirmation bias I have. If I pray about it and it doesn't work, prayer doesn't work. I'm done praying. I'm pissed off. The problem is what your expectations are. The problem is where you have put the value and what you have emphasized. Now, for me personally, when you say does it change things, I know that if words come out of my mouth, I'm unlikely to move this bag from here to here. In my own life, I don't think that's going to happen. But if I take it in a way in my life, whereas there's something that happened where it's for all intents and purposes, a tragedy. And I pray about it, and now I have been changed such that it is now no longer a tragedy. It is a learning experience. It is a time for growth. It's an event that brought people together, an event that made me grow. I have in fact changed an outcome. I've changed something that was a tragedy to something that is a success. So in that regard, I do believe that prayer changes outcomes.
So is it because of the prayer that the outcome?
100%.
Michael is bringing up the
So we
Jonah.
just celebrated Jonah. Jonah, there's a clear verse where God was ready to destroy the people of Nineveh, right? It's clear. God was going to destroy the people of Nineveh. And then chapter 3, it says, Jonah goes, and then it says, and God relented, and the people of Nineveh were saved, essentially. It is a direct correlation in that chapter. That's the one that
changed the outcome.
If the book of Jonah wasn't in the Bible, I would believe that God doesn't change.
Can I say another verse to prove this point also? And that goes with what Mark is saying. In Psalm 106, there is a lot of verses that speak along the same line, but that's the one I remember. Psalm 106, verse 23. Therefore God said that he would destroy them, and the bad people. That God would destroy the bad people, and his people actually, the Israelites. Therefore, God said that he would destroy his people, had not Moses, his chosen one, stood before him in the breach to turn away God's wrath, lest he destroy them. I think it's very clear. Yeah, if Moses did not stay in the breach to pray for them, he would destroy them. And that goes back to what Romania said at the very beginning, that when I pray for someone, it works. It does work. He would destroy them unless Moses stood in the breach and turned his wrath away.
I have a question. So from when God created the earth, did he know exactly what was going to happen till 2020 right now?
Did he know?
Like everything was pre-planned.
That's foreknowledge.
No, foreknowledge. There's no land. So there's still things that could happen this way and this.
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask.
Pre-plan means that.
Pre-plan that
you're
robot.
more, yeah, you're a robot.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure. Okay. So I think that was perfect because both sides have an argument, and I was on the argument that prayer does not change anything until, once again, certain things happened in my life personally that taught me otherwise, right? But I think the most important point here is to realize that this man who has made a living, his entire life, is known as the man of prayer. You hear Pope Carolus, the man of prayer, right? He's telling you that one prayer changes. He's telling you that one prayer changes someone's life. The Bible says Moses changed all of Israel's life. Jonah changed the Ninevites' life, right? He's telling you, and I'm saying it with, obviously, I'm sure he's not the only person that prayed. But Pope Carolus' prayer, okay, I personally believe, saved the Coptic Church. Okay? Granted, that's a very large statement. I'm not saying that alone Pope Carolus is the one that stood up the church, no. But what I'm saying, this man came at the time, right, when a church was not, it wasn't on a hill. It was dropped. It was a straight drop. Okay? Straight drop. There was no return from where they were going. Okay? He's put in a time of the person that believes in prayer like it is his breath, like oxygen, okay? In a time when no one else believed it. They asked him, please stop praying. Imagine someone tells you stop praying for me. It's like, why? Like the very common Egyptian thing is like, oh, Salih, like, you know, like it's become so common after that, right? Imagine that this person made his living off of that. I believe, and obviously the Bible also believes so, and the church believes so, that one prayer can change an outcome. Granted, the outcome is not black and white, like we're saying. It's not going to stop a war from happening, right? That's not what I believe. I don't think it's as grand scheme, right? But you have to have that faith of that one prayer can do. Don't think that if I'm the only person praying for the lost sheep, that guy's not being saved, right? If I don't put his name on the altar, it's not being saved. Your prayer, every single prayer you give, right? And I'll show you guys a quote at the very end to explain that to you. And it says a final quote in Revelation that proves that point, okay? Let me finish up because we're kind of running a little over. This is just some of the milestones during his tenure. I'll show you guys pictures instead of words. So this one here is, remember the whole thing about, go talk to the government for us, give us reform, give us this, give us that. This is the Pope sitting next to the top general, okay, and Gamal Abdel Nasser. Their friendship.
That's Haile Selassie, that's the Ethiopian president.
Bravo, Haile Selassie. He's not the president, he was an emperor.
Yeah.
Oh, emperor, not general. Okay. This one, right? Okay. So, thank you for that. This is the person that they said. This is the person that they said doesn't talk to government. Okay. Their relationship with the president of Egypt and Pope Carolus, okay, Gamal Abdel Nasser in a editorial said he is one of my closest confidants. A Muslim president, right, said about Pope Carolus, he's one of my closest confidants. That means he trusted him with everything. He's not saying, oh, he's a nice guy. I'll tell you. He's saying he's one of my closest confidants. This is the person that I was saying, people were like, go talk to the government for us, okay? Huge thing was bringing St. Mark's relics back from Rome, right? We got the Roman Church in Italy gave us St. Mark's relics back, okay? Because he is the founder of the Coptic Orthodox Church, which is for thousands of years we could not get them. The Roman Church, impossible. You will not touch it. Okay? One of the biggest accomplishments in his life. Obviously, this right here can show what prayer can do. Once again, I'm not attributing the Mother of God appearing in Zaytun only to Pope Carolus, right? But I don't think we have an apparition of Saint Mary many other times in our lives or that we know of. Okay? And the beautiful monastery of Saint Mina, who he started, and I'm sure we've all visited, or if you haven't visited, you should go. All right? This is the final quote. It's impossible to get the Pope's intimacy in relationship with the Mother of God, like I said, and the saints, especially Saint Mina. And I said I was going to stay away from giving you guys all of these beautiful stories about Pope Carolus. You guys can read the miracles on your own and believe as you may. But I know the one thing I do know that is a given, that is hard evidence, is his prayer. So no one can argue me on that, right? And that's why I didn't put all these stories that could be going back and forth, right? It says that whom he used to see and converse with regularly in Saint Mina and Saint Mary. His life, this last sentence is how I'm going to close. His life is a witness to the close communion that exists between the church militant, okay, the church militant, and the church triumphant. Okay, it's a hard sentence. Church militant and church triumphant. Church militant being, this is how we believe. Prayer is militancy, is knowing that I gotta do this. I must pray. None of us will be saved if you do not pray. Okay, that is his belief. Okay, and his life proved to be very successful with it, right? You will not be saved if you do not pray. How can a husband and a wife not talking all day, or whatever it is, not talking all day, suddenly have a healthy relationship? Impossible. Impossible. How are you? And Abu Nahana told me this, and I'll tell you guys the quick story about Abu Nahana and we'll close. Abu Nahana, I one time told him, he's like, I hate praying. It's so boring. I'm talking to a picture. He goes, you hate praying now, Habibi? I was like, yeah, Abu Nahana. He slapped me with his cross on my head and actually probably left it then. He literally told me, he goes, if you can't pray now when you're here, when you're eating and all that, how are you going to pray for the rest of eternity in front of all of his angels and all that? He goes, why are you going to be in heaven then? What's the point? Madrash. He goes, see, enjoy your life now. He's like, what's the point? If you can't pray now, if you can't stand before your Lord now and have a conversation with him about stuff that convinces your life, that changes your life, there's no rationale that you can convince me of that says heaven is for you or me. You understand my point? Does that make sense? The church militant means you must abide by. It's not meant to give you guidelines to be a control. It's not. It is just proven. If you do this, you win. The church triumphant. You do this, you win. Right? One last point. And this is the last point, and then any questions. Okay? In Revelation, and this is tying in about the prayer, okay? The smoke of the incense together with the prayers of the saints rose up before God from the hand of the angel. Okay? Comes to the hand of God from the hand. This is in the book of Revelations, right? When it's speaking about all this mythical and mystical things that we don't understand, right? It says the smoke of the incense, our shoya, right? All of our prayers that we put on the altar and in our hearts, with the prayers of the saints, are before God. There's nothing more evident that says prayer changes. Prayer fixes. If you have an argument with that, I'd love to see it. Okay? I'm pretty much done. I don't know if you have any questions. We're a little past time, but Roman, you have one question and we can.
Yeah. So, like back to what you said, the Wunahanda, because I think that's like a thing we all fall into, like a trap. How do you make your spiritual life more, like how do you make it more, like turn it into reality and make it interesting and exciting, and because it feels boring, like there's something everybody says in church, and I hate to hear it all the time. They say when you pray, just say "Thy will be done," and that's it. For me, when I take that phrase, it just makes everything like set in stone. Like nothing makes sense for you to reason with God and to fight with God. And if everything that He says is what it is, and you just have to accept it, and it's for the best, then why pray in the beginning? But when you say pray, fight, and then wait, and then ask him to give you like guidance, and then talk to a spiritual mentor, then you start growing and you go like you're on a journey, you learn and you make mistakes, and it becomes more more reality and more interesting that way. But my question is, how do you once you start getting bored, or okay, I pray, I read the Bible, nothing changes, or feel nothing anymore, so how do you light that fire back again and start moving on?
I wanted to say something. I liked one thing that Uncle Samir said a couple of weeks ago in his meeting, which was if you he was talking about marriage and stuff, and if you love a certain person, anything you do towards them will it wouldn't feel like a chore or something that you have to do. I think if you truly love God and you want to be with Him, I think anything, prayer, going to church, doing everything for God, I think that would be something you want to do, something you're excited to do. So I feel like building the relationship with God first would be the main priority.
I think the problem with Romani's question, it's a very valid question, بس فيها كلمة كده which is not right. The idea of I don't feel anything. هو since when our life with our relationship with God is based on how we feel. Imagine your life your relationship with me is based on our feelings. النهارده انا متخانق مع مراتي، جاي قرفان فاطلع قرفي كله عليك لان انا متضايق. Okay? Our relationship with God should not be based on feelings. It's based on trust. And when I pray, He listens. Not I feel that He doesn't listen, or I feel that He listens, or I feel that I want to pray, or I feel that I don't want to come to the meeting today. That's what happens. People just go, oh, I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like going to church. I didn't feel like going to liturgy. That's exactly what the devil puts in our mind. Go by your feelings. Our life with Christ is based on facts, on truth, on belief, not on emotions or feelings. That's the problem. I know that prayer is good for me, even if the devil will put in me, oh, he's far, you don't feel him, انت بعيد, انت وحش, انت sinner. I know that he's gonna listen to me, and I know that it's good for me. So I'm gonna do it, even if I don't feel it. Now the problem with this, and if I go by feeling, slowly I'm gonna stay away from him, to a point that's gonna be very difficult to go back.
There was a funny, one priest was talking about, when a wife is sick and she asks her husband in the middle of the night, please go get me a cup of water. When he goes and gets her the cup of water, he's not thinking oh my God, I love her so much, she's the best wife, I'm falling in love with her every day, Valentine's. There's not that lovey-dovey situation at 3 a.m, right? It's, my wife needs water, I love her, I'm gonna get it for her. It's not, his action wasn't based off of the emotion, the highs and the lows, right? Because if it was based on emotions, right, the times we would pray the most would be when a church gets bombed in Egypt. Those liturgies after a church gets bombed in Egypt are on fire, right? They're very fervent. Liturgies after the 50 days are just kind of chilling, right? So if we base it off of that, you're never gonna have a relationship. We're never gonna grow.
And my last point, because Joe just texted me something that was beautiful. It said, when it says church militant and church triumphant, church militant, he told me was people that are currently fighting on earth, right? People that are fighting the good fight, and the triumphant is in heaven. Thank you for that. And glory be to God.